Hi there folks, back again for another video. In this one we're going to dive into a little bit of a follow-up to the previous one where I talked about the paint scheme for my Amblers of the Heldenhammer. In this one we're going to be looking at the Skaven that I painted up recently from the Skaventide box set, and a little bit more on the method and the madness that went into painting them. So as you'll see, these look a little bit different in terms of style to the Stormcast Eternals. That's because I realised that with the Skaven you're going to have to paint a hell of a lot more miniatures, and so I wanted to try and go down a different route when it came to the painting of them. And so what I did is I employed the Slapchop or zenithing technique that is obviously quite popular for getting through lots of miniatures very, very quickly. And then the majority of the miniature is then painted in a section of contrast colours, which then sort of like really make the miniature pop. And then of course I've gone in with things like metallics here on the likes of the staff, and the bell and the sword there, in order to kind of finish off the miniatures themselves, and then do a little bit of highlighting here and there as well. So the basis for these miniatures was to start in a grey rather than a black, and then it was highlighted up and dry brushed, effectively slap chopped, using Rakarth flesh and then Wraithbone for the final highlight. So you kind of get a little bit of the gradient, and you can see that little bit in the cloth that the Grey Seer is wearing here on the robes. From there, it's just a case of applying the contrast paints and just painting very, very quickly. Now, obviously, this character miniature took a little bit longer than others, but not drastically so. One of the nice things about painting in the Slapchop method and the contrast method is that you immediately see the highlights coming out as you paint. The other big bonus, I think, is that you tend to get a good chance to do a little bit of blending and stuff on the miniature to really kind of make them pop. So for example, I went back in and did sort of like a grey fur colour using the contrast grey on the beard and stuff of the Grey Seer and on the rest of his fur, which I think really tied quite nicely, and then it blends really quickly into the flesh colour for the Grey Seer as well. Which you would have to like work successively up to if you were doing it with normal paints, like basic acrylics. But the contrast paints really help you kind of cheat that step, I guess you'd say, which I think is quite nice. From there, it's just a case of kind of finishing the miniature. So once you've got all the contrasts down, you can go in and do the metallics like I've done here, or you could just do the metallics using speed paints, for example, from the Army Painter. And then it's a little bit of traditional painting in that respect. So you do a wash or something on the metal. In this case, it was Reikland Flesh Shade, again for the Balthazar Gold, and sort of working it into some of the different elements of the metal there to give you that look of rust. And then just coming back and finishing it off with a little bit of extra detail work here and there. As you can see, sometimes you get some bits that are a little bit suspect, or you can see where the contrast has got onto different elements of the miniature that they shouldn't necessarily be on. But I think one of the things you've got to accept when you're doing that method is that you are going to get that slightly messier look. But if the final outcome is good, I think that can kind of really help sell it, and it just looks great when it's on the table, to be honest. I think I poo-pooed the idea of Slapchop to begin with because I just didn't like it compared to the traditional way of painting my miniatures, but I've slowly come around to it over the course of the last couple of months, and I think it's a really great way of making your miniatures pop very, very quickly. So that's one of the Grey Seers. I want to show it on a slightly bigger miniature as well. So this is the Claw Lord on or the Gnaw Lord on the Claw Lord on the Gnaw Beast, I think it was. So this was again painted using the contrast method and Slapchop, and you can see that definitely coming through here on the skin for the beast. The other thing that's really nice about painting in this particular style is that obviously something that would take you ages to replicate, because you'd have to do all of the skin, then wash it, then come back and do the highlights and stuff, is done all at the same time. And so this particular mount, and mounts are a particular bugbear of a lot of people in wargaming, was done in the case of 15-20 minutes, which is just pretty good, isn't it, really, when you think about it. And again, you can just do a little bit of wet blending in the fur elements to kind of match it all up, which is really nice. The red armor was a really interesting way to go as well. I thought that came out really nicely. And again, you can see the detail work on the face there, just really pulling together things with the fur next to the regular flesh tones. And again, this miniature saw the use of a lot of metallics as well, just to kind of finish it off. As you can see, that's popped up in the use of the weapon and the rack, the trophy rack on the back, which again was washed with Reikland Flesh Shade just to make it pop. Also, a really nice tip for doing things like the Warpstone weapons. If we can make that focus, and you can see it in the Warpstone tattoo there as well. Go in with the brightest white you can. So, I mean, admittedly, whatever I had access to was Wraithbone, and I just filled in the gaps in the tattoo and just painted that whole thing white, and then just went in with the Warpstone glow in order to make it pop. And I think it really, really works nicely. And if you get a little bit of overspill, that's fine. That's just effectively a lazy glow effect, to be honest. Same goes for the basing is fairly simple on these. It's just a lot of dry brushing, to be honest. Again, metallics used for some of the larger pieces, but it meant that the miniature was painted up very, very quickly. I think this only took me a couple of nights to get done, but I was quite happy with the final result for the likes of the characters. We'll move on to one of the Rat Ogres, because I've painted up the Spearhead first, because I thought that was a good way of doing it, so I can use it in some games in the near future. So this is one of the Rat Ogres from the pack of 3. Again, detail work there just by running in the Wraithbone and then going back over it with the Warpstone glow. The boils and things, I just went in over the top with Carroburg Crimson, just a wash over the top of those, and I think it makes them pop a little bit more and gives that vibe of sort of irritated skin without having to go too over the top with it. And of course, when you get to some of the slightly larger areas of the miniature, you do get to see some of the foibles of contrast, where you get the pooling elements and stuff like that. But I think generally overall, it came together really nicely on the miniature. And if I say so myself, I genuinely think these turned out really, really well. And I'm really interested to use that same technique on maybe some more of my Age of Sigmar stuff, especially in sort of conjunction with traditional techniques. But yes, that's just the Rat Ogre that's been painted up. And then, of course, the main reason for doing this particular technique is to use it on your Clanrats, because it just makes them so incredibly easy to paint. So again, this was done with a grey base coat that was then highlighted up with Rakarth Flesh and then Wraithbone. You could probably go one step higher if you wanted to get even more contrast on this, pardon the pun. But then it was just going in with the reds and the yellows and stuff to try to match the look of the kind of like classic Clan Verminous style armor. The one thing that I did realise is I went in with a Rune Lord Brass originally and did their weapons in Rune Lord Brass, because I thought that would make it look quite nice. But then I realised that I actually really quite like the look of the battered metal and then the Reikland over the top of it. So I went back in on successive miniatures, changed that. So you'll see that some elements of the miniature are still done in that kind of brass, but the majority of it is all done in that classic basic metallic that then get to wash of the Reikland Flesh Shade over the top of it. But it's a very simple and easy and effective method for just really making your miniatures pop very, very quickly without having to do too much extra work on them. These miniatures would have obviously taken a really long time to paint if you were going down the classic base coat wash highlight step, but because you're going to attack these with contrast paints, you can get a whole bunch of them done very, very quickly. I kind of like stopped. I mean, it's obviously just a preview of some of the miniatures, but I kind of stopped halfway through these once I'd done all of the contrast paints, and then came back later to do the metallics as a separate step in a different session. But the dry brushing and then the contrasting of these takes no time at all. You can get through batches of 5 or 10 of them very, very quickly. And then the only thing you've really got to worry about is going back in and doing the metallics. And that takes no time at all once you've done the washes. And then it's just dry brushing the base. And away you go, to be honest. Yeah, you're gonna obviously you're not gonna get as good a look as if you were. Well, you're not gonna get as best a look as if you were approaching these, painting them in the traditional format. But I think for a massive army of them all just on the tabletop together, it really, really pops, and it creates a quick and easy way for you to get hordes done. So yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of people know the virtues of Slapchop and contrast paints and using them in that fashion, but I think it's really fun to see that effect in person and that final result. I mean, I was particularly proud of the Grey Seer. I didn't really think it was going to work on the character miniature, but it's one of those things where you have to kind of trust the process, and once you do get to that point and trust the process, it really comes together and creates something fantastic at the end of it. So yeah, that's my two little sort of preview videos of what I've been working on at the moment. I'll probably come back and talk a little bit more about contrast paints in a little bit when it comes to some World War II miniatures that I've been working on. But yeah, had some real good fun painting up these Skaven. They were a nice aside from what I've been working on previously, which was Fire Slayers, which can be a pain in the bum. But yeah, let's just look at this. If you have any questions, as always, just make sure to drop them down in the comments down below. But yeah, that's me sort of like signing off on a couple of the different armor projects I've been working on alongside Warhammer Age of Sigmar in the new edition. I'll make sure to get involved in the comments if you have any questions. And yeah, just let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I will talk to you folks very, very soon indeed. Bye for now.